Sports. You say, hey, when there's a problem, you call a man. The Democrats can't even tell you what a man is.
So when you hear Walz brag about how much of a man he is, what does that tell you?
I think there might be a little bit of a cope there, you could say. There's a little bit, he has to remind us how masculine he is, trying to not even be able to load a shotgun or...
We were getting scary close to people justifying totalitarian measures.
I think we need to push back on this.
Tim Walz in the campaign trail was literally saying free speech doesn't include hate speech and misinformation.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hey man, you. Because everything that we called misinformation just a few years ago, it's on the front page of the New York Times now.
Tim Walz entered with bumper sticker slogans, but Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk brought hammers of logic, and by the time they were finished, all that was left was silence and the sound of collapsing narratives. Rogan and Kirk did more than just call out Walz. They tore through his talking points like a tornado through a paper house. It was a surgical takedown, driven by facts and wit and a total disregard for political nonsense.
Say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. There has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power.
The New York Times just printed a thing. Turns out we were lied to.
They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
Yeah, you lied.
The most masculine thing that someone can do in America today is stand up for women that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So while Tim Walz is going on Gavin Newsom's podcast, attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy, well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men stand up for women when they're not able to.
When it comes to exposing political nonsense, Rogan and Charlie Kirk are not known for their tact. Their attacks on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz are like watching to precision mechanics dismantle a broken machine in front of a live audience. One brings the hammer of common sense and experience, while the other uses the chisel of sharp facts and unrelenting logic. Together, they transform Walz's political history into a real-time cautionary tale.
Did you say you could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked their ass, and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. Like they're threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. That's what he said. I'm like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools, you're...
When it comes to Tim Walz, the illusion is precisely the issue. Joe Rogan examines Walz's leadership style as if he were examining a bizarre conspiracy theory that somehow managed to win him office. Rogan approaches it like a man who has witnessed too many smoke and mirror acts in his life. He is not impressed by appearances or polished speeches.
Video of Tim Walz doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Exact same thing, and
Yes.
he said, of course, it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
We spent 3 days debating, having them trying to debate that President Musk gave a Nazi salute. Of course he did. But that is a distraction.
This is how crazy things have gotten. Like,
Of course, it's a salute. Tim Walz remarked in a video that showed him doing the exact identical action over and over again. He said that we debated for 3 days with them, and that although it is true that President Musk saluted, it is a diversion and demonstrates how out of control things have become. He observes a leader who is fixated on image and optics, but who is utterly disconnected from how his ideas are really implemented in the lives of actual people. Joe begins by giggling at Walz's ridiculous epidemic act. In contrast to Walz, who saw the epidemic as an opportunity to try out for the position of emergency management in a political drama series, Rogan has spent several hours speaking with medical professionals, scientists, and individuals from all areas of life.
he was 100% right with Tim Walz.
I know I'm doing something right when the Fox News crowd is all
at me like crazy. Like, I'm loving it.
That guy was almost the vice president of the United States.
Elon Musk was crying last week. Tim is being mean to me, basically, like, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that thing where it shows Obama saying, I need a vice.
Joe Rogan ridicules the logic behind closing gyms while keeping big box stores open in Minnesota, questioning how the virus selectively targeted small businesses. He mocks Walz's obsession with control, likening it to a child clinging to a remote, enforcing strict, fear-driven rules without common sense. Joe compares Walz's leadership to a weatherman in a bunker, making bad calls from afar while real businesses collapsed and never reopened.
That Tim Walz cocksucker, if that guy got into power, like if Kamala died and Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, was our fucking president, you know how crazy this country would be? That weirdo who puts tampons in the boys' room, and what about our joy? Like, he's a complete pathological liar. Like a complete liar. Lied about being in Tiananmen Square, lied about being a fucking...
Joe lays out the constantly shifting health directives like a puzzle with mismatched pieces, while Walz insists it all makes sense. Charlie Kirk jumps in with hard facts, hammering Walz's failed economic policies. While other states reopened, Minnesota drove businesses away, treating companies like the problem instead of the solution. Charlie highlights the absurdity of Walz pushing climate justice press releases while small businesses struggled to survive.
They decided that J.D. Vance was weird.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
And then they just weirds everywhere.
Weird. Oh, you don't want a weird guy. Meanwhile, you have Tim Walz is your VP.
Weird.
You don't think that guy's weird? He's weird in every way.
Yeah.
The way he walks, the way he waves his hands.
Yeah, he reminds me of the clown emoji.
He's a bizarre guy.
He's a strange dude.
I just don't understand why they made that choice.
Yeah, it gives the creeps.
I just don't understand why they made that choice. There's a lot of other people that are qualified. I don't know why. I read that Kamala Harris made that decision.
Charlie then rips into Walz's crime policies, describing Minnesota's streets as chaotic experiments run by someone who learned policing from internet memes. Crime soared, police morale tanked, and Walz's weak response to the George Floyd riots, filled with hesitation and empty unity speeches, made things worse. Charlie compares Walz to a substitute teacher with a guitar no plan, just noise.
Bring in her, and they bring in this other guy who's radical from Minnesota. That's the vice president, who he believes a lot of wild things. One of them is transgender surgery for people who are under 13. Another one is abortion up until 9 months.
Ooh.
Yeah. He changed the Minnesota state flag to make it look like the Somali flag.
You don't want a weird guy, but in the meantime, you have Tim Walz as your vice president, and you don't think that guy is weird. He's weird in every way, from the way he walks to the way he waves his hands. And yes, he reminds me of the clown emoji. He's a strange guy, and when they decide that J.D. Vance was weird, remember that one. It's simply that I don't understand why they made that decision. Yes, it gives me the creep. I'm not sure why, but there are many other competent individuals, and I've heard that Kamala Harris made that choice when she...
Podcast with Newsom, why don't you go throw the pigskin with Walz? What do you say?
I think it's a great idea. I'll fly in up to Minneapolis. We'll see what it's all about, Governor Walz. You're Mr. Coach. You're the one that can vote.
Then he delves into education, bringing up the terrible performance of Minnesota schools under Walz were standardized. Scores were declining and classroom ideology was increasing, making it less about academics and more about activism. Charlie makes fun of how Walz's administration responded to the decline in reading and math scores by hiring more diversity officers and training modules, teaching children how to journal about their privilege instead of helping them read. Charlie sums it up perfectly, saying that under Walz, schools became a place where students learned everything except the fundamentals, with the bureaucracy growing. Joe Rogan returns to the roast by drawing a comparison between Tim Walz's concept of leadership and the narrative of a low-budget survival movie in which the protagonist repeatedly ignores the clear warning signals to leave. Joe claims that he is the person who would spend 10 minutes composing an email on safety procedures, rather than assisting someone who has just fallen down a set of stairs because he is always more concerned with the message than the goal. The cultural element is also brought up by Rogan, who describes how politicians like Walz are so preoccupied with winning over the right individuals on social media that they lose sight of their true constituency.
I think it would be very similar to Barack Obama throwing a baseball. I don't think it would be a sight that would be easy on the eyes. It's right, I could throw quite a tight spiral. Hey, Governor Walz, let's go have a game of catch. We'll see how you do.
And rather than addressing actual issues, Walz seems to be running a state as if he were attempting to make a trend on a platform. Joe makes it apparent that Walz and others like him are just interested in being liked by those who share their opinions. They are not interested in having genuine discussions or gathering accurate facts. Charlie Kirk concludes by saying, with the last slap, Walz is the perfect example of what happens when a governor tries to run a state like a graduate seminar. All theory, no practice, all talk, no traction. Minnesota is not a TED Talk. Charlie claims that Walz treated it like a sandbox for elite ideas that ultimately collapsed the minute they set foot on the ground. It is a real place with real people. They expose a man who talks like a reformer, but governs like a guy who won a raffle to run a state for a week. What makes the roast so entertaining is not just that it is funny, but that every joke, observation, and jab has unquestionable truth. Joe and Charlie do more than just criticize Tim Walz. They destroy him. One does this with punchlines and comparisons.
Just weird and how avoidable it was.
100% avoidable, but pathological liars, people that are habitual liars, they just lie all the time about it.
So sharp you forget it is political analysis, while the other uses data breakdowns and surgical attacks that leave no room for compromise. Walz's career thrived on media passivity, slogans, and smiles, but under Joe Rogan's sharp eye and Charlie Kirk's hammer of logic, the polished image quickly crumbled. Charlie zeroes in on Walz's obsession with government micromanagement, mocking his utopian fantasies that turned into endless committees achieving nothing. They expose Walz as a leader who believes government is superior to parents' businesses, and even reality itself.
Cognitive decline problems at his age, but at her age, she's just dumb.
Biden and Biden saying I need a vice president dumber than me.
Great. Kamala Harris may be the dumbest person ever elected vice president in American history.
Kamala saying I need a vice president dumber than me. It's Walz. Men have tampons.
We have a lot of accomplishment. We haven't taken adequate credit for it, frankly. We got to do a better job of getting the word out about what we have accomplished and who did it.
You got to lose because we got to break this.
Rogan jumps back in, calling out Walz's talent for framing every failure as part of a master plan. Charlie points out that once leaders think they're the smartest in the room, they stop listening and lose control. Joe compares Walz's speeches to reading motivational posters while the city burns. He notes Walz always reacts too late, but still acts like he's just discovered the problem. Joe sums it up perfectly. It's like watching someone shatter a window and then give a lecture on glass safety. Charlie criticizes Walz for not owning anything. Walz has a degree of blame deflection, so if anything goes wrong, it's the responsibility of the federal government or local leaders. Climate change. Anyone except him may be retrograded by Mercury. Charlie says that Walz would accuse the shoe business and demand a nationwide examination of walking techniques if he fell over his own shoelaces. He only uses the term accountability in sentences when the cameras are rolling. Rogan continues by emphasizing the lack of empathy, knowledge, and comprehension of the problems faced by working-class people, which are all filtered via advisor headlines and popular subjects. Based on Yelp ratings, Joe likens it to attempting to manage a farm. Although everything seems tidy on the outside, there is mayhem within and no cows. Charlie ends with a harsh synopsis. Walz is in charge of press conferences, not people. He is more concerned with influencing stories than outcomes, and his best talent is transforming political failure into tactful disappointment, as though muttering, "Bad news makes it less terrible." But no amount of tactful wording can undo the harm. Once a proud and functioning state, Minnesota is now the setting for Walz's continuous tutorial on what not to do. Suddenly, Rogan and Kirk leave behind more than just a political roast. They leave behind a thorough autopsy. The cause of death is evident: too much control, little understanding, and a governor who mistakenly believed that authority equated to advancement. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you don't want to miss out on the hottest celebrity news, make sure to subscribe to Daily Finder.